Welcome to the Navigator Podcast.
Welcome to the Navigator. My name is Brad Malone, and with me today is Brad Dempsey, CEO of Solutions 360. So Brad, we both have employees, and we work with a lot of companies who have employees. And in this day and age, and for quite a while, we hear people, asking when people don't perform to standards, who do we blame, managers or the employee? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think ultimately it is the manager, but there are some caveats to that. Number one, is the manager the person who selected and hired that person? Does the manager have the responsibility and authority and balance to carry out the right actions? Ultimately it always goes to the top level of authority, I think,
Right.
for all responsibility.
And I think that's key is once I have that and then I delegate down and I delegate down, are we establishing one, communicated standards? So to me, that's within the authority of management and their responsibility. The second is, am I holding people? Did I train people to do those? And did the person who was being trained actually acknowledge that they were trained? And so I think there's some handoff there and some joint responsibility to say, got it, thank you, I'm competent. I've been provided the system and the structure to succeed. You can now hold me, quote, accountable. Do you see that happening?
Do I see it happening successfully, or do I agree with that as a concept?
Do you agree with it?
I agree completely as a concept.
Do you see it happening? Yeah.
Yeah. We're guilty of that sometimes. I think everybody is. It's a very difficult standard to maintain, but it's something we always strive for. It's funny, when you were talking, I almost thought about project management, because what you're talking about is setting expectations, measuring to those expectations, setting realistic expectations, and giving the resources necessary. So in a lot of ways, it's like project management, isn't it? Yes,
well, very much, especially people's growth, people's behavior, people's competence, especially if I have a growth path, that's a project. And we ought to have a plan and a communicated plan. And I think oftentimes there's not that joint communication between the two and a true handoff. I find with too many organizations, we think that silence means consent. And silence oftentimes just means I don't want to talk about it, or I don't agree with you, but I'm scared, or a whole bunch of things. So whenever I hear silence in an employee manager conversation, or don't hear anything, I know that there's some underlying things that still need to be uncovered.
Again, back to expectations, and then filling people in on how they did on those expectations, as we talked about in a previous podcast.
Right. I think also communicating. Again, expectations are one, but what did I say about it afterwards? Did they meet them or not meet them? And if I say nothing, I just find that we devolve into the lowest common denominator, or we set up this passive blame conversation where it can't be me, it has to be them, and then we have this, yearly review called, performance review. Well, that ought to be daily. Either I thank you or I call you out and go, could be better, or we could improve. But maybe it's caring. What do you think about, do employees feel that their managers care anymore? I know good ones do, but what do you think overall?
I think it depends on the industry. I think in the technology integration space, I think it's a level above a lot of industries I see, because I think because of the size of the companies and the owner operator aspect of it, I see a lot of caring, a lot of passion in the industry.
So you're talking about caring, and I find that people, I'm going to use in quotes, care. They care a lot about their employees, but that sometimes turns into coddling. Versus I care so much, I'm going to hold you to a standard because I believe in you. And I think that I hold people, I always ask people, do you hold your friends to higher or lower standards? And people will often tell me, well, I hold my friends to lower standards. And I'm like, well, then how can they be your friends? So that's kind of the pride that I bring when I work with employees and my people, is I'm holding them, but I'm also thanking them incredibly, and I'm trying to grow them to those standards. And therefore, it comes back to, again, expectations and standards.
That's a great point. And you talked a little bit earlier about blame. And I think one of the really important aspects of blame, I had one of our customers many years ago, probably about 15 years ago. I was learning about their culture, and their culture was very clearly that we're not a company that has a culture of blame. We're a company that says we admit to our mistakes. The key is you find the root cause and you put in place a process or a way to stop that thing from happening again, focusing on the forward and not focusing on the blame.
Right.
And I think that instills a certain set of values and a certain pride in a lot of the culture.
Well, it sounds like we keep coming back to culture. So I think we're going to have a couple more conversations on just the importance of knowing it, living it, and then kind of creating it daily.
Right.
Thanks. Enjoyed the
Thank you.
conversation.
As always.